Greetings, everyone. Excited about today's show. I'd like to welcome Paul Archer, founder and CEO at Duel. Paul, welcome to the show.
Ben, thanks for having me. Greetings from a very grey and dark London.
Yes, that's true. We had dark and gray. I'm in Denver right now, where it's actually sunny. We've had a lot of rain, which is unusual. So, well, welcome, Paul. Let's kick this off. Tell us a little bit about your SaaS background.
So I got my first job in SaaS. I was the first employee for a company called GradIntel, which is a graduate recruitment headhunting technology company that now serves about 2/3, I think, of the UK student market. So I was their first employee when I was 19 or 20. I took time out of university to go and work there, learn how to sell from the CEO, who's just an amazing founder, an amazing salesman, and sort of just like really got into that world there. And that was my first taste of it. And I then kind of took a roundabout way. I did a bunch of different things. I used to do large scale expeditions, and then found myself on the more consumer side, building software for games and working on the gamification. And what we found is that there's an opportunity to build a B2B SaaS business using the gamification experience that we've got, combining it with the brand world. And that's how Duel came about.
I love it. So yeah, diverse background, expeditions, first employee when you're early on. And yeah, really, really interesting. And what your background, say education wise, because a lot of founders, sometimes they're technical, they're business, sales, and what's your background that you came up from?
I'm semi-technical. I think I know enough to be dangerous, which means I probably should never be getting involved. I wrote my first website when I was, built my first game when I was about 9, and my first website when I was about 12 or 13. However, my academic background was in business and consumer psychology, in the psychology of people and understanding how they work, and so that strange combination is actually set me in really good stead today, because a lot of what we do at Duel is tied into how you can get the behaviors that you need from people, and what are the triggers you need, what are the incentive structures you do. All of that plays to that psychology there. And then obviously it's a technology platform, so the tech background does help.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, I love that background. And you said you wrote your first game at 12, or was it 9?
It was not really a game. It was like it was on an old Macintosh with my friend. It was called Hanson Hackers, and it had the premise that these yellow blobs, which were to represent the blonde members of the Hanson band, who at 9 we thought were the absolute nemesis, and they'd move around and they'd get slashed and they'd turn to red blobs. So it was not the most sophisticated thing in the world, but I think it probably represented the mind of a 9 or 10-year-old.
Yeah, that's great. I was listening to SiriusXM the other day, and they were talking about they went to a Hanson show just because they happened to be in town, and the whole thing. Yeah, so interesting. So Duel, yeah, tell us a little bit about Duel. What does Duel do exactly? You mentioned a little bit about it, but yeah, tell us what the company does.
So Duel is a platform used by consumer retail brands to grow through the people that love them. So the idea of brand advocate marketing is how can you turn word of mouth into something which is measurable, predictable, and scalable, which obviously in SaaS we love a good bit of that. And so it's normally very hard to do. Most brands spend their time to sort of acquire customers, and they spend their money on adverts because it's easy. And the word of mouth side of things really comes to how do you grow through people? How do you find those people that are customers? How do you find those people that are fans? And then actually move them to become advocates so they can support or recommend your brand, and do that publicly. Now, over the past couple of years, particularly because of COVID, it's just that we've obviously all moved on to social in terms of the way that we exist, the way that information passes between people. But particularly from there, the idea of social commerce has just exploded. And it's an industry which is, they're set to be about $1.2 trillion passing through it in 2025. And this is just anyone who's made a purchase that's been influenced by social media. And most people have. But what's remarkable about social is that it's user generated. It's generated by real people. It's not by one central media company or by brands or by companies. It's individuals, which means that if a brand needs to play in this world, they need to be able to manage the relationships with those individuals so that they can advocate for them and actually drive commerce through social. And so what Duel is it's a platform that makes that really, really easy. And we work with some of the biggest brands in the world. We work with mid-market and enterprise brands to allow them to do that at the scale that they need. Because if you're really big, the need that you have to build relationships with thousands, tens of thousands of advocates across languages, different territories, integrating that into your technology stack is incredibly complex, which is where Duel comes in as the solution that they need.
Yeah, really interesting, because I interviewed a founder of an influencer platform, and he was seeing budgets now, right, allocated to these different channels now, which didn't exist maybe 10, 20 years ago. So do you see that as well? And also, would you say, are advocates the same thing as influencers or slightly different?
No, it's a good question. So I'll start with the second one first. So an advocate is anyone who is a fan of a brand, who supports or recommends it and has a more of a long-term relationship with them. So they're doing it over a period of time. And so every one of us is an advocate. We all have brands that we love, that we're passionate about. It could be a sport we're into, or it could be a trend. It could be makeup. It could be fashion. But we all have these brands that we love, and then we tell our friends about them. We tell them about the products we're wearing, we're using, why they're so great. And this is the most effective way for any brand to grow. And in fact, it's the way every brand has grown. But previously, it's just never been something you could invest in and make sort of scalable. So an advocate could be you and I. It could be someone who is a social creator. They're in fact what both of us are. We both have a podcast, so we create in our own ways there. But also we're looking at people on Instagram who are creating content on there, people on TikTok, but they may not have a large audience. They may have 1,000 followers or 2,000 followers. They're advocates. You could be looking at industry professionals like makeup artists or instructors or hairdressers. They're also advocates. And you're also looking at your macro influencers. You've got George Clooney as a celebrity drinking Nespresso, one of the old school ones, right? Yeah. And then you've obviously got these massive ones. You've got Kardashians. You've got people with millions of followers on YouTube or Instagram. And as long as they are doing it over a long period of time, they're not just being paid to pretend to like a brand, which the vast majority of influencer marketing is, by the way, then they are an advocate, and brands will use our technology to maintain a long-term relationship with that person, not dissimilar to the way you would with someone within your CRM, for example.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, budget-wise, now, do you see marketing budgets getting more defined now in these categories, right, that didn't exist, or is, like you said, great, I love it. It's like, it was hard to tap. There are advocates out there, right, 50, 60 years ago, right? But how do you leverage that? How do you tap into, which sounds like you figured that out. Do you see marketing budgets getting very detailed in these areas now?
Everyone's slicing and dicing the same stuff in different ways, I guess, but the trend is definitely there. So anyone who had advocacy in their job title at a consumer business, I think there were 2 when we started setting off on this mission. There are now hundreds. So it has become something which is like within the marketer's purview. However, it's still a very nascent category, which is incredibly exciting for companies like us who are able to enable them for that, because these guys, they don't have a technology stack that they use for driving brand advocacy. They're currently using 10 different tools bolted together, unconnected, and something like Duel aggregates those and bundles them into one technology. So it's actually one vendor, so it's a fraction of the cost, but also it's much more effective because it's integrated. So the budgets themselves, it tends to be that you're pulling from one of the 2 areas. You're either acquiring customers or you're retaining customers. And those budgets haven't changed in terms of how much is allocated. But what would have been spent on newspaper ads and out-of-home billboards then gets spent on digital, which basically means 90% of that will be either Facebook or Google. And then it's like, how do you scrabble some of that to try and reallocate that budget and actually spend it on your fans, your advocates, so that they can get free products and they can be given a remarkable experience that causes them to literally remark upon it, create content that's about your brand to their audience that's authentic and true, so that you believe it. And that's what drives the commerce side of it, because someone can say, oh, hey, I love this thing. If they're pretending to like it, we can all see through that a mile away, just because, you know, we've grown up on the internet. But if they genuinely have the authenticity that they love a product, then not only can you acquire a customer for a fraction of the price, but they then convert 3 times more likely, and they themselves are then worth twice as much when you look at the lifetime value. So the maths works out. It's then just a question of, all right, are we willing to make this long-term bet to actually allow this to happen?
Okay. And can you give us a basic use case? Like, say there's a clothing brand and they want to use your platform. How does that work? What would like a use case look like as far as using your platform?
Yeah, so we go into a clothing brand, and we work with quite a lot of clothing brands on both sides of the Atlantic. So let's take someone like Cool, the outdoor brand based in the US, somewhere in the region of $100 million turnover. And they have a couple of programs that they use the Duel technology for, because we went and help them design or outline what their brand network looks like where are the different communities of advocates that they could possibly work with. And so they, you know, we outlined that there's their customers obviously is the largest, but they also had a community of industry experts and content creators, so photographers mainly, out creating amazing content, and they weren't able to bring those guys into it. And they also had some influencer activities. So what we did is we designed 2 very different programs for them. One, which is their customer loyalty program, which uses the Duel technology to track everything that a customer buys, as well as what they do. So you as a customer can track that you spent $300 on a jacket, but then when you left a review for it, you got some points from that. You also posted it to Instagram. You also referred your friend, which means that you leveled up into the VIP tier and unlocked early access to the sale, for example. You know, really kind of consumer experience that we understand. So they're using that for that. But then there's a separate group for these content creators and these photographers who create just the most remarkable content. And so they're getting rewarded. They've got like content bounties, like we need a picture of a dog on a beach throwing a frisbee or whatever it is, and the first 20 is going to get, you know, free pair of pants, whatever it is. It's much more sophisticated than that, but to give you a phrase. And then these guys are going out and doing it, and every time they create content where they are using or wearing the cool gear, then they are actually uploading it through their portal, which sits on the brand's website, through tasks and activities and missions and challenges. And they're being incentivized with generally free product. You know, you can pay people, but it's nowhere near as effective as giving people freebies, because that keeps them hooked, or you're giving them store credit, because that's actually cheaper to a brand to do as well. So actually, in terms of the way that the brand is receiving something, it's much more beneficial.
Okay, love it. Yeah, perfect. Love that example. And so some of the basics here. What year did you found your company?
So this one was spun out of a gaming studio in at the very end of 2017. It took us a while to find what we were doing. We thought we knew it, set off in this mission to kind of own this category, and turned out we were in the completely wrong direction. You know, we went back to the drawing board and did what I'd recommend all SaaS founders did, and actually spent some time talking to our customers in the first place. So we did a lot of consulting. We used the gamification expertise, and we brought in Jack Crocker, who was she was the GM of brand and community at Lululemon, who are by far and away the best in the space of growing through community. I think they're worth $40-odd billion, and they've done that almost entirely through word of mouth and advocacy. And so we reverse engineered a lot of what Lululemon were doing, combined it with our area, and then consulted with hundreds of brands, and some of the biggest brands in the UK at least, to test out this model. It clearly worked. We then built the software to support that, which came out of beta in we went into beta at the very end of 2019 and came out of beta at the second week of March 2020, which historically is probably the worst time anyone has ever launched anything ever.
Yeah, start of the pandemic, right? So interesting, and I want to dive into this just a little bit, right? Because we see all these great stories out on the internet, like these products that just take off, but I think you alluded to it took a while to get to that product market fit. So you've founded around 2016, but it sounded like maybe it took a couple years going back to the drawing board, talking to customers to really figure out what product to offer to your customers.
Yeah, it was, and it was kind of, it was good and bad in some ways, and we were able to kind of make ends meet by consulting, and we were brought in by the C-suite, and are well positioned now as when, if anyone talks about how to get brand advocacy, then we'll often get a call in this country. So that was beneficial, and from that we really deeply understood what we needed, and actually the product we built was infinitely better, and it actually is, you know, head and shoulders above the rest when it comes to serving the enterprise side of things, because it took a while to get there. But even with that being said, I could argue we didn't really find product market fit until, you know, less than a year ago, because we were testing out different go-to markets, we were testing out different customer segments, and, you know, we thought it would work for smaller brands, and actually what we do is we solve, the bigger you are, the bigger the problem we solve, and that's a great place to be if you have enterprise reference clients. But, you know, we didn't have any enterprise reference clients, so how on earth were we going to get into those? And so we were able to leapfrog from, you know, $1 million brands to $10 million brands to $20 million brands, and we were lucky enough to get buy-in from the guys at RAB, who are the largest outdoor brand in the UK, who are a larger brand. And that then allowed us to then get in with Charlotte Tilbury. And as soon as we got into Charlotte Tilbury, who are one of the largest beauty brands in the UK, that allowed us to then sign ASOS, and then to sign Unilever, and to kind of go and start working with those big ticket deals. So it was definitely a progression, and our ability to sell into those, understand the value proposition, understand the way that we needed to talk to those brands, and the way that we needed to deploy this really quite complex piece of technology in a new space that's never been done. You know, it takes a while, and now we've got that. I always thought that we might have had it previously. Now I know what product market fit feels like. It's like, aha, when you've got it, you got it.
Yep. And that was my next question before we move on here to the next. But what was there an aha moment or trigger or something that said, and you said a year ago, figured out product market fit. Was there some aha moment where you're like, oh yes, we found it?
The moment was when we repackaged the offering to get after the social commerce opportunity, and that one was, previously we were very much going in for the retention budgets. So basically, if you wanted to do a loyalty program, we'd be able to do a better loyalty program. And then we just switched that mindset after having just a skunkworks project that went incredibly successfully, that we didn't expect to go well, where we've built a program for a jewelry brand to manage. You know, they had 30 social creators managed by one person, and they asked if they could use our software to automate out some of the mundane tasks they were doing. And we'd sat down with that person, asked them what they did, and turned out that, you know, most of the stuff they were doing seemed pretty pointless, and we could get rid of 80% of their job. And so, and that sounds like we got rid of their job, but what we didn't do, they're still there. They are now, within 2 months, they went from managing 30 people to managing 1,000. And then from that 1,000, within a year, there were over 10,000 people in that program. And that is a program which has reached hundreds of millions of people, and is one of the major drivers of new customer acquisition for that brand. And they're a big brand. And so that thing, we just had this incredible case study in a place that it's still advocacy, it's still in the same area, but it wasn't what we initially thought would be the case. But when we doubled down on that, very, very quickly, we were then just signing up brands like left, right, and center, because post-COVID customer acquisition costs have skyrocketed if you're an e-commerce brand. And we provide an alternative to that. That's not only cheaper, but also it's just much better. It's more authentic than just buying ads and putting more money into Zuckerberg's pocket. So it does appeal in many ways.
Yeah. So if I took something out of that, it sounds like it was understanding what this person did at that company where they're managing 30 advocates or something like that, but you were able just then, you could go from 30 to 1,000 and beyond. And that was kind of that trigger moment.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Love it. Love it. Because product market fit means so many different things to so many different companies. Products are really interesting to hear that. So, and amazing what we can get out of, just asking when your company was founded. So how about now next, where is your company located?
So we're based in London and Bristol in the UK, but growing pretty quickly. We put our first boots in the ground in North America earlier this year, and expanding. Generally remote. The most people are remote, but we have an office that people occasionally turn up into when they want to go to the pub after work. Generally,
Yeah. All right, and then team size. What's the team size, employees and contractors right now?
Yeah, about 30 or so, and growing as we speak. We had a bit of a pause in hiring when the recession sort of kicked in, trying to took stock of what we're able to do. We've fortunately been able to continue growing through that. I believe that what we have is an antithesis to a lot of the ways that people are spending money. We are able to save them a bunch of costs. So we're hoping that will continue to be the case as budgets tighten. But one of the last budgets that anyone tightens is a customer acquisition piece. So we're fortunate in that space.
Yeah, that's great. And then what could you share around kind of size of your company, ARR, revenue levels, anything you want to share there?
Yeah, well, no one knows the difference between pounds and dollars right now, probably. But we pushed through the million ARR this year, and have been growing within our ICP segment, 10-12% a month compounding. So we know that we've got that. That's one of the other reasons about how it just really clicked, that we knew we had that fit, because it just kind of just clicked.
Okay. All right. So just past $1 million ARR. So congrats on that. That's awesome. And then growing about 10 to 12% monthly in your ICP. And so you just raised some funds. So how much capital have you raised to date?
We've raised 3 million to date, which has allowed us to really build out the product, give us the breathing space to take a few alternative routes to finding that product market fit, as we covered on, and now we're at that stage of we're now starting to ramp up that go to market, and actually things are going pretty well. We're going to go out to the market again and raise more capital, predominantly so that we can base and grow our sales and support team in North America.
Okay. Perfect. And so that was a $3 million seed round, and then perfect seg into the next question. So what were those triggers or milestones that you saw with that first $3 million raise where you said, hey, it's time, and now you're seeing it again? So tell us a little bit about that, what you saw that indicated that it's time to raise the 3 million seed.
We took some we've had a really supportive investor in the form of SuperSeed VC, who when we met them just through these kind of just cursory chats that we were having, it just clicked, and they right away were like, we'd love to do the round, and we were like, we'd love to work with them. The main reason being is because they are ex-operators. They have built successful SaaS businesses themselves, and I'm a first-time SaaS founder, and that level of expertise is exactly what we're looking for. So the ability to bring them in as a partner was one of the major triggers for it. And just we're at that sort of stage of things were starting to take hold, starting to realize that we're now moving from a company whose job it is to find product market fit, to one whose job it is to figure out that sales market fit, that go to market. And in that involves a couple of more bodies and heads and capacity to start figuring that out effectively.
Okay, so I love that. I love that distinction, right? Finding product market fit. Looks like you found that, and now that go to market fit, that repeatable sales and marketing motion. And then you're looking at now raising another round. And is it now to put dollars towards that go-to-market motion, or what's that trigger like, hey, now we're ready for, an extension or that next round?
Well, apart from the fact that as a British company, we got infinitely cheaper to American investors over the past month. We know that we've got a go to market that's working now, and that actually came faster than we expected. And we know that we have ambitions to grow faster than we could do if we were to bootstrap it. Now we could very happily bootstrap where we are in through the recession. That's not a bad choice, but given the opportunity and the growth of the market, the opportunity that brands are seeing, the social commerce opportunity, actually, and the fact that we are really first movers when you look at the enterprise and mid-market space, it's ours to get after, right? So why would we not grow faster if there are brands? Our biggest problem is brands don't know we exist. We're over here on a small island. It takes bit of capital to be able to build up that network in North America that we don't necessarily have. Although we've now have reference clients from global brands that everyone will recognize, and that makes things a lot easier. But certainly, it's not something which is going to be necessarily cheap and bootstrappable if you want to move at the speed that we want to, and we actually can move given the size of the addressable market.
Okay, that's great. So first is product market fit. Now you're seeing some go-to-market motion that's working as well, and the growth there, the growth of the market now kind of accelerate that process. So, and did I read you have about 400 customers? Is that right, or over 400?
Oh no, we are more enterprise, so we've got
Okay.
In the region of about 50 or so.
50. Okay. 50 customers. Okay. And then, some really interesting lessons out of that, raising the seed, now looking for that next round. So for the founders in the audience, any tips and tricks or lessons that you can share with the audience around your lessons learned from fundraising?
So I think that the biggest lesson I've learned from fundraising is to trust your gut and to treat it just the same way that you would hire anyone. And you're going to be getting into bed with someone over a long period of time. If they're your lead investor, it matters less, obviously, if they're just putting a check in. But if they're going to sit on the board and they're going to contribute to the strategy and direction of your company, then you want to choose them wisely. In fact, more wisely than you can with an employee, because if an employee doesn't work out, you can get rid of them. You can't do that to an investor. So I would say to use that level of diligence to do reference calls on them beforehand, to ask around, to go for a drink with them, do whatever it is that you need to just to feel right about it. The second thing is, I think that I've known before, within 5-10 minutes of meeting a person, that they're going to write a check, or maybe they didn't know that we were going to write a check, but it was certainly on the cards from it, because there's just a click, and it's the same. The feeling is exactly the same as you get when a client just gets what you do, and they're going to sign up. And yes, there may be a whole bunch of stuff, and diligence, procurement might come in the way, or their boss might block it, whatever. But when you just click with a person because you personally get on with them, but also they get you, they get the vision, they get where you want to go with it, and it feels good, and it just feels great from the moment that call started. And that has been the case for us. That was the case when we've met. We've had various investors, and that was the case when we met them, and it just clicks. And other times previously when I've raised money. So if it feels hard and you're a bit meh, even if they do want to write a check, there is other money around, and if you can get someone to write a check, you'll be able to get someone else to write a check. That's for sure.
I love that. So 2 lessons: trust your gut, do reference calls, ask around, and then second, that you kind of have a gut feeling that that they're going to write a check in 5 to 10 minutes. Within 5 to 10 minutes of meeting them, and you just have that feeling, and it feels good. So love that advice for the founders out there. And so what is next for your company? What's coming up that's exciting? What's next?
Well, we've got some really exciting brand launches coming over the horizon, working with at giant household names and some big projects, which definitely is exciting from my perspective. We as a company starting to grow that out, raising that Series A, and being able to get after that US market is the next piece. And so making sure that every brand knows that we exist, that this is an option, and that they don't have to spend all their money on Facebook ads, and actually they can be investing that in the people that love them. And so that's something which definitely appeals to most people we speak to. They just don't know that it's an option in most cases. So that's something which I'm particularly excited about. The other side of it is this category is really only just starting, and so there's a lot of education that we do in best practice in how this works, and how they can really wrap dollar signs around it as well. Something you'd be interested in. It's just a lot of the time we're talking to these brand marketers about how they can get their CFO to sign off on the budget, because no one got fired for buying IBM in the SaaS world, but also no one got fired for buying Facebook ads in the brand world. Actually, how can you get them to be brave, to actually step out and make an investment in the brand, because your brand is your reputation. And this category, giving people the playbook in the same way that the lean startup gave startups a playbook of, you can follow this to build a great company. We are trying to build the same for brands, and that is something which I think will be going for quite a while. And as it starts to take form, it's starting to feel really nice. It's starting to feel like people are taking notice, and I can't wait to see where that one goes.
That's fantastic. So some big brand launches coming up, raise that Series A and more. So pretty exciting. So Paul, really appreciate the time. So a lot of interesting tips, tricks, lessons learned along the way. And if the listeners want to learn more about your company, where should we point them?
Absolutely. So duel.tech, that's duel.tech. They can check out, that's the website for Duel. You can find me on LinkedIn, Paul Archer, pretty easy to find on there. And then I also have a podcast where I interview some of the best brand builders in the world about how they built their brands and how they contributed to that. And that's called Building Brand Advocacy. And you can find that on all of the podcasting platforms.
All right, perfect. Love that. So duel.tech, duel.tech. You've checked out your LinkedIn profile, and then Building Brand Advocacy podcast. So Paul, really appreciate the time today. Thanks for sharing your story.
Ben, thanks for having me.